There comes a point in life when you stop pretending. Pretending that everything's fine, pretending that the silence doesn't hurt, pretending that being tolerated is the same as being loved. Edward knows that feeling all too well. At 70 years old, he spent decades believing that sacrifice was the price of companionship, that his needs, his voice, his presence didn't matter as long as he kept the peace. He stayed in a relationship where love became a shadow of itself, where his worth was questioned and his dignity slowly eroded. And like so many elders, he started to fade into the background, dismissed, overlooked, disrespected, until one day something changed. It wasn't a loud moment, it was quiet. A glance in the mirror, a lonely dinner, a memory of who he used to be. That's when Edward made a choice. A bold, beautiful, terrifying choice. He chose himself. He chose to reclaim the life he still had, the love he still deserved, and the respect he had long denied himself. This isn't just a story about growing old. It's a story about growing wise and finally free. If you've ever felt small in a relationship, if you've ever questioned your value, if you've ever wondered if it's too late to start over, this story was made for you. This video is not just a story. It's a mirror, a message, and a moment of truth for anyone navigating the complex terrain of love, aging, and self-worth. It's for those in their golden years who have given their hearts fully, sometimes at the cost of their own peace. It's for those who've stayed in relationships out of habit, fear, or the belief that starting over is no longer an option. But Edward's journey challenges that idea. Because no matter your age, your story isn't over. Your worth doesn't expire. And the right to be seen, respected, and loved for who you truly are, that never fades. In this video, you'll witness how one man, at 70, stepped away from emotional pain and stepped into something far greater: self-respect, healing, and a new beginning. Whether you're 55 or 85, whether you're in a long-term relationship or quietly struggling behind closed doors, this story is a reminder: it's never too late to choose you. Edward's story began like many others, with big dreams, a full heart, and a quiet determination to build a good life. He grew up in a time when men were taught to provide, to protect, to endure, and Edward did all of that, and more. He married young, started a family, and poured everything he had into his role as a husband and father. He worked long hours, often sacrificing sleep, personal passions, and even his health, believing that love meant sacrifice. He was never one to seek attention or praise. Just seeing his loved ones safe, fed, and under one roof was enough to keep him going. But behind the steady hands and reliable routines was a man who longed to be seen, not just as a provider, but as a partner, a human being with thoughts, feelings, and a voice. In the beginning, there were moments of closeness, quiet laughs, warm glances, shared dreams. But slowly, as the years passed, those tender moments became fewer, and the space between them grew wider. Conversations turned transactional, affection faded into obligation, and the emotional connection he once felt began to dissolve into something far more painful than conflict: indifference. There was no dramatic betrayal, no shouting matches, just a slow, silent erosion of intimacy, the kind that creeps in when two people stop looking at each other as equals and start existing as roommates under the same roof. His gestures went unnoticed, his thoughts unheard. He began to feel more like furniture than a man, always present, but no longer acknowledged. He told himself, this is just what happens with age. This is how long-term relationships go. But deep inside, the ache grew. Not from loneliness alone, but from being invisible in the one place he should have felt safest. He showed up to family dinners with stories to share, but was met with distracted nods. He reached out for closeness, but was met with coldness or dismissal. He began to doubt himself, questioning whether he was asking for too much, whether his needs were valid at all. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was the realization that in all his years of giving, no one had ever asked, "Edward, how are you feeling?" He had become so used to putting others first that when he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. He wasn't just tired, he was emotionally starved of affection, of recognition, of love that truly sees you. And yet, a small voice inside him never completely faded. A whisper that said, "You matter. You still have life left. You are worthy of being cherished, not just needed." That whisper would soon grow louder, becoming the force that would change everything. Change doesn't always come in thunderous waves. Sometimes, it begins as a quiet moment, a flicker of awareness, a truth we've buried for far too long rising to the surface. For Edward, that moment came on an ordinary Tuesday. He had just finished dinner, another meal eaten in silence, another evening where his presence went unacknowledged. As he cleared the table alone, something inside him cracked, not in anger, but in sorrow, a profound, aching sadness. He walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, and caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. Asterisk. The man staring back looked tired, not just physically, but soul deep. Wrinkles lined his face. Yes, but they weren't just from age. They were from worry, from years of holding back tears, from conversations never had, and for the first time in decades, he didn't look away. He looked closer, and he asked himself a question he hadn't dared to ask. Is this really how my story ends? Asterisk. He sat on the edge of his bed that night, alone, thinking about the younger version of himself, the dreamer, the lover, the man who once believed in joy. He remembered how he used to laugh, really laugh, with his whole chest, eyes wide open, heart unguarded. And he wondered, when did I stop laughing like that? When did I stop believing I deserved more? That night, Edward didn't sleep much. Instead, he reflected on all the times he'd stayed silent to keep the peace, all the times he had swallowed pain so no one else would feel uncomfortable, all the birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet victories that went unnoticed. He thought about the ways he had slowly accepted crumbs, convincing himself they were enough because he was too afraid to ask for the feast he truly deserved. But fear is a liar, and Edward began to see it clearly. He realized that staying in a place that made him feel small wasn't loyalty. It was self-abandonment. And in that realization came his turning point. Not a single moment of rebellion, but a reclaiming of truth. A decision that he was not too old, not too broken, not too late to choose something different. The next morning, he did something simple, yet revolutionary. He looked in the mirror again and said, out loud, "I deserve more than this." And that sentence, though whispered at first, would become the anthem of his awakening. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It's not loud or dramatic. It's gentle, tender, often quiet. For Edward, the journey back to himself began in small, almost invisible ways. It started with morning walks. Just a few blocks at first, no destination, just movement. With each step, he felt a little lighter, as if he were walking away from the weight of years that had clung to his shoulders. He joined a local community group, just a gathering of people his age who met to talk, laugh, share stories. At first, he barely spoke, but over time he began to open up. He told jokes again. He started to remember the sound of his own laughter, a sound he hadn't heard in years. And perhaps most importantly, he began to feel seen. Not as someone's husband or father, but as Edward, a man with ideas, feelings, purpose. He picked up hobbies he'd long forgotten: woodworking, classic jazz, even painting. His hands, once used only for labor and service, were now creating beauty. He read books that stirred his soul. He started journaling, capturing his thoughts that had gone unheard for too long. He began writing letters to himself, not of regret, but of forgiveness. Letters that said, "You did your best, and now you get to live better." With every new experience, Edward reclaimed a part of himself, his dignity, his voice, his freedom, and slowly the idea that he was too old to start over began to vanish. Because age, he realized, had given him more than wrinkles. It had given him wisdom, and with that wisdom came power. He wasn't bitter. He didn't hate the person who hurt him. He simply let go. He stopped trying to fix what was never meant to break him. Instead, he focused on building something new. A life defined not by survival, but by sovereignty. A life where love could still exist, but only if it was kind, mutual, and rooted in respect. This was not a second chance. It was his first real chance to live fully, freely, and on his own terms. Edward was no longer trying to be what others needed. He was finally becoming who he was always meant to be. Edward's journey wasn't just about leaving a toxic relationship. It was about returning to a truth that had always lived within him, that self-worth isn't something others give you. It's something you awaken in yourself. Through his healing, he learned that love, real love, never asks you to shrink. It doesn't silence your voice, ignore your needs, or punish your growth. Love at its core is freedom, and anything that chains your soul is not love. It's fear wearing a mask. He discovered that peace is more precious than approval, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not in anger, but in quiet reverence for your own dignity. He learned that boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but doors to let the right ones in. And most of all, he realized that it's never too late to come home to yourself. There's a myth in our culture that aging is the end, the closing chapter, the last verse. But Edward's life became proof that aging can be the beginning of something extraordinary. Clarity, courage, and the kind of self-love that doesn't apologize for existing. His story became his message, and that message is this: you are never too old, too tired, or too far gone to choose yourself. Edward's story is not just about the heartbreak of losing yourself in a relationship. It's about the profound power of rediscovery. It's about what happens when you decide, finally, that your heart, your soul, and your happiness matter. Edward wasn't special because he faced hardship. Many of us have faced that. No, what made his story extraordinary was the moment he chose to reclaim himself. He decided to stop being defined by the roles others imposed on him and to start living for his own truth. How many of us are like Edward? How many of us have spent years, decades, sacrificing ourselves, believing that love means giving everything and asking for nothing in return? How many of us have stayed quiet, hidden our pain, allowed disrespect, or buried our own dreams because we feared being alone, being judged, or simply because we thought it was too late to change? But let me tell you this, It's never too late. Not for you, not for anyone. Age is not the barrier we've been taught to believe it is. It's just another chapter, and it's never too late to turn the page. Whether you're 55, 70, or even 90, your worth is not something that fades over time. Your value doesn't expire. It grows, deepens, and strengthens with every experience, every lesson, every moment of resilience. Like Edward, you may have spent years being invisible, feeling unseen in your own life, in your own relationships. You may have told yourself that this is just the way it is, but I want you to hear me when I say, no, this is not the way it has to be. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be loved. You deserve a life that feels as vibrant as the person you are inside. The truth is, many of us forget that love is meant to uplift us, to fill us with strength, to help us grow into the best versions of ourselves. Love should never deplete you, should never make you feel small, unheard, or unimportant. But when we live in relationships where love is one-sided, we begin to lose our voice. We begin to forget who we are and who we can still become. But just like Edward, it's possible to wake up. It's possible to walk away from anything or anyone that dims your light. It's possible to rebuild. It's possible to create a new beginning, one that honors your needs, your worth, your voice. You don't have to settle. You don't have to believe that time has passed you by. Life has so much left to offer you, but first, you have to choose yourself. So ask yourself this: what would my life look like if I started putting myself first? What would it feel like to finally honor my own needs, to love myself fully, to respect my own boundaries, and to demand the same from others? The power to change your story is in your hands, just like it was in Edward's. Don't let the years slip away in silence. Don't let your story be defined by what others think you're worth. You are worth more than you realize. You are capable of more than you believe. And it's never too late to choose a life that reflects your true worth. So I challenge you today. Look in the mirror and say these words out loud, just as Edward did. I deserve more than this. I am worthy of love, respect, and happiness, right here, right now. And then take the first step toward making that truth your reality. Because when you choose yourself, life opens up in ways you can't yet imagine. Edward did it, and so can you. Your best days are still ahead.